Death Valley. Its name conjures dread. And for good reason. It can be hell on Earth. This ultimate testing ground makes no room for the weak.
This is extreme, extreme, and you know, it's not something to fool around with.
This desert consumes the ill-prepared.
This person had baked out here in a Dutch oven for a week and a half.
Yet out of this hostile land emerges an other world steeped in contradiction. So brace for the unexpected, because in Death Valley, things are rarely as they seem. From its distant core in the solar system, 93 million miles away, the sun fixes a glaring eye on Death Valley, blasting the landscape with the force of its heat. It creates a scorched expanse. But this is no typical desert. And this is no typical national park. Sprawling 3.5 million acres over southeastern California, it is the largest national park in the continental United States. And by far, the most extreme. No place else in the Western Hemisphere is as hot, as dry, or as hostile. At face value, its monumental landscape intimidates. And Death Valley has many faces. Weathered badlands brood over ancient lake beds. Fickle currents of sand shift along the desert floor. Craters, blasted by molten rock, plunge 700 feet. And parched salt flats languish lifeless for 40 miles. Death Valley's desolate terrain may seem ominous to some, and for good reason. You can die here. But for others, it's the forbidding that allures.
People seem to be attracted by being in almost the hottest place you can imagine on Earth.
Local physician Dr. Ben Jones is well acquainted with the dangers of this place. He took the case of a man who attempted a 20-mile round-trip hike across the valley floor in the extreme heat of summer.
I began wondering, what in the world is somebody doing hiking across Death Valley?
The valley's 120-degree temperatures suck 3 quarts of moisture from the body every hour. The hiker had only carried 3 quarts of water for the entire trip. In the best of situations, he would have required at least 4 gallons.
I can imagine that he was, feeling nauseated, maybe had a headache. His feet would sink about 6 inches into the sloshy brine. At one point, his dark glasses fell into the stuff, and he didn't even bother to pick them up. He was obviously getting more and more dehydrated. You begin getting heat cramps, leg cramps, where you can't even walk. What's really worse is if you don't sweat, your core temperature can shoot up to 108 and you can just drop dead.
The hiker died within a half-mile of his truck. 6 gallons of water sat in the front seat.
I did the autopsy, and the body that I saw was about half of what a normal adult would be in size. And it's like this person had baked out here in a Dutch oven for a week and a half. His face was mummified, looked like Ramses II, like you'd see in the Egyptian Museum. The skin of the body was completely parched, like real tough leather. What was interesting to me, that there was no sign of any predator activity. The ravens hadn't poked his eyes out, the coyotes hadn't been out there. Those animals know better than to be out here.
Death Valley is a cruel testing ground. A desert without mercy. To survive, every creature here must devise ingenious ways to outwit Mother Nature. Some simply run for cover. Along the edge of the dunes, one desert dweller holes up underground where it can be 15 degrees cooler. Kangaroo rats pass the heat of the day sealed off in their dens where they recycle moisture from their own breath as they sleep. It's July and 124 degrees in the shade, if you can find it. It is so hot, birds are grounded in a heat-stressed pant. Roadrunners flutter their throats to move the heat from within their bodies to their mouths where it escapes. If they overheat, they'll perish. And that goes for all roadrunners.
It's so hot that when I smile, like the water on my teeth, I can feel it evaporating instantly.
Christopher Berglund is one of the world's top athletes selected to take on Death Valley in the toughest foot race on the planet, the Kiel Badwater Ultra Marathon. For 135 miles, these athletes will run non-stop through the lethal July heat, searing their feet over a broiling road. They'll be lashed by 30-mile-an-hour headwinds that burn the breath from their lungs and face 20,000 feet of cumulative elevation gain. It's what most of us would consider epic torture.
One reason people want to come here and subject themselves to this crazy heat and the pain and the suffering, as opposed to another animal in the desert who would like seek refuge in the shade, is that our regular lives are so easy at this point, and the elements are so intense. So it's a good test. It's the ultimate challenge to me.
And it's the test that attracts even those well-versed in the perils of performing out here. Dr. Jones has run this race 6 times himself.
It's a real challenge to come out and experience all of this heat, the dry air, the distance. The race itself is like 5 marathons in a row. And, you know, what could be better? But you got to remember or realize that this race is no good for the human body. You know, people are stacking up a year's worth of fitness all in a few hours.
Just staying alive through the dead heat of summer is hard enough. The bold few who stay active are in a league of their own. Harris antelope squirrels find their comfort zone by bellying into cooler ground to purge excess heat from their bodies. Others, like the black-tailed jackrabbit, are simply cooler by design. Standing over 2 feet tall, this hare uses its long ears as radiators to dissipate heat. A lacing of capillaries brings the blood close to the surface of the skin where heat is wicked away, keeping them cool. Death Valley roasts in triple digits for up to 8 months of the year. No place else in the Western world comes close to being this hot. Working like a huge natural convection oven, hot air crawls up the steep valley walls, cools slightly, and sinks back down. Compressing as it descends, it heats even more. Masses of superheated air take ground temperatures soaring up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. But heat is only the beginning. The mere 1.5 inches of rain that falls each year condemns Death Valley to nearly perpetual droughts. Convection clouds taunt the valley with the promise of rain. Most of the time, they don't even bring shade. Storms blowing in from the Pacific slam into the mountains to the west, leaving the valley in a barren rain shadow. The trivial amount that does make it past the Guardian Ranges is often stolen back up to the skies in the form of a virga, rain that evaporates before even hitting the ground. For a landscape so exposed, Death Valley keeps a few secrets well guarded. This remote corner of the park is off limits to all but an authorized few. Here in Devil's Hole, the earth opens to reveal a rare window into Death Valley's implausible underworld. A universe of water. In twisted irony, the driest place in the hemisphere sits atop one of the largest aquifer systems in the United States. Spanning nearly 40,000 square miles, it soaks down to 20,000 feet in some places. Few are permitted to explore the mysteries of this abyss, and for very good reason. These divers are on a mission in this unlikeliest of desert habitats to save the unlikeliest of desert creatures and Death Valley's most precious treasure, the tiny Devil's Hole pupfish. These relics of the Ice Age once swam in frigid lakes at the feet of mastodons. Today, they dwell in this 93-degree spring-fed pool where they've thrived for thousands of years, until now. With only 200 left, this species is gravely endangered. Park biologist Linda Manning and her team closely monitor the fish for clues to their decline.
I think our greatest hope is that this population will continue to survive in its natural environment the way it has for thousands of years. Our greatest fears is that it will go extinct, and we don't yet understand everything that's going on in this system.
Fluctuating water levels, limited food supply, and contamination are possible factors, but wrestling the unknowns makes for a grim situation.
9. One was a 5mm.
9 for me.
I had 5.
This fish is not found anywhere else in the world, and so we are really right now at a point where they may or may not survive. We may lose this fish even within the next year or so.
While the Devil's Hole pupfish teeters on the brink of existence in a vast world of water, their cousins in a surface spring hold their own in a mere few inches. The Salt Creek pupfish have adapted to live in water 4 times saltier than the ocean. Though not endangered, survival here takes on a sizzling urgency as a greedy sun bears down on their shallow stream. The tiny fish run the gauntlet as they take the last courtship dance and chase the evaporating waters upstream. Within days, the merciless sun has stolen their creek. The water has simmered away, leaving a wake of death lying on an open saline grave. Though many have died, the lucky few have beaten the retreating water and reached the spring source to replenish the gene pool. In 6 months, the creek will flow again and the sun will burden a new generation. From this toxic environment springs a macabre oasis. Some plants have evolved to thrive in Salt Creek. By maintaining a higher salt content than the soil they occupy, pickleweed and saltbush don't lose water here as other plants would. Even with roots encrusted, they flourish. The desert holly employs a subtle tactic to defy the heat of summer. As ruthless sun rays bombard the plant, it tracks its leaves to avoid being blasted by the beams. Waiting for relief can be unpleasant work, especially when you're the largest native in the park. But desert bighorn sheep have well-honed survival skills. Their 9-stage digestive system enables them to derive nutrition from the harshest of desert plants. Death Valley's limited resources keep this population in check. Only about 400 sheep roam the entire park. But they've found their niche. These nimble climbers negotiate craggy cliffs with ease, scrambling higher with the rising temperatures. Lording over the rocky hillsides, one brawny beast reigns supreme, the chuckwalla. Largest of all lizards here, they bulk up by eating their greens. But unlike the bighorn, they choose only plants high in moisture. And they have an uncanny ability to gauge the water content of plants as they eat. If it's too low, they'll move on. At 3 p.m., the mercury peaks at 128. To run through the hottest part of the day seems impossible. To take it slow just prolongs the agony. Chris Berglund is hanging tough.
Last year I steamed through here, walked the end, so maybe this year I'll walk this part, steam through the last half. So I'm optimistic.
But optimism alone won't get even this 3-time Ironman champ through this race. Each runner must have a support crew working to cool them down with every step.
We started out with 25 gallons of water and about 500 pounds of ice. We've still got some water. We haven't used all of our 25 gallons. It's like walking into a wall. It is so hot, I can't even begin to describe it.
The crews tangle with the heat themselves, but keep it all in perspective.
It's harder for them, right? So we can't really complain, I guess.
This is extreme, extreme. And, you know, it's not something to fool around with. The pain is unbelievable.
Pam Reed has been down this road before. She's a 2-time winner of this race. We humans cool ourselves by sweating, but here, perspiration vaporizes instantly. Pam does her best to rehydrate by drinking often, but the effect is only temporary. Reptiles like the chuckwalla are masters at conserving moisture, but have no means of regulating heat. When in danger of overheating, the chuckwalla seeks shelter. For the rest of high summer, he will spend most of his time in the shade. Pam is beyond the point most people can survive, but she's not about to stop. There's still 100 miles to go. Off the road lie those better equipped for a foot race in Death Valley. The fringe-toed lizard, custom designed to handle the sand with speed and efficiency. Combed feet enable them to tear over burning dunes at speeds of 20 miles per hour in hot pursuit of prey. But when hotly pursued by the sun, it helps to be an escape artist. Death Valley's human history is painted in strokes of success and defeat. For 9,000 years, Native Americans have coped by working with the elements. In the heat of summers past, they, like the bighorn sheep, sought higher, cooler ground. But 19th century gold seekers, out to strike fortunes amid the rock, instead struck hardship. Lack of water and proper cooling caused equipment to fail, and in their quest to tame the valley, the miners themselves were broken. Heat was a constant companion and hardened killer. Though a few golden dreams of success were realized, the miners left behind a legacy in ruins. But if there is one facet of Death Valley just as treasured as its land, it is the jewel of its night.
I think the stars and the ability to see them gives a person a kind of a grounded experience in reality. It's not pictures on TV, it's not a computer game, it's the real universe.
Easy to south. Okay, off we go.
With the help of high technology, Park Service scientists Chad Moore and Dan Dorisco are monitoring America's darkest skies in an effort to keep them unspoiled by light pollution. Death Valley's is among the most pristine.
For millions of years, people have had this constant companion of the night sky. It was their calendar, it was their watch, it was something that they looked at every night, perhaps our modern equivalent of TV.
But even here, the dark sky is at risk. From 100 miles away, the lights of Las Vegas spill over the horizon and aircraft beams stab at the stars.
It's only been the last 100 years that we've had electric lights at night, where we have completely changed our experience of the night.
Death Valley remains one of the last places where it's possible to gaze on heaven, at least for the time being.
If we don't do anything, we make no changes, we continue to light more and more cities and do it unwisely, it will be lost.
A mere few hours' drive from Las Vegas and Los Angeles makes Death Valley easily accessible. Most people experience the park from the safety of the road, a narrow blacktop lifeline through the valley. But venture away from the road, and things could go very wrong very quickly. The vast treeless expanse consumes the unlucky and the ill-prepared. It's easy to wander off the beaten track. Out here, there is no beaten track. This park, the size of Connecticut, is 95% raw, wild land. And with so few truly wild places left, Death Valley beckons the adventurous. Locations named Coffin Peak, Dead Man's Pass, and Hell's Gate are bound to intrigue. But tread with care. The chance of finding a person lost in such immense, remote terrain is nearly impossible. Sometimes, people disappear into a wilderness of rock. These bones of the earth are the windows to the past. For nearly 2 billion years, the story of Death Valley has churned with the violence of its natural forces. Thundering volcanoes and cataclysmic earthquakes twisted, warped, and rocked the landscape. Simply put, Death Valley's evolution is that of slow torture. $20 million years ago, the valley as we know it began to take shape as the Earth's crust literally came apart at the seams. Blocks of land slid past one another, forming alternating valleys and mountains. For the past 4 million years, the rising mountains on either side of the valley have been engaged in a colossal tug of war. As they continue to rise, the valley continues to sink. Its floor now lies nearly 300 feet below sea level. But actual bedrock is buried beneath 9,000 feet of gravel, salt, and ironically, mud. Though Death Valley appears locked in time, there are unexpected forces at work that can alter the landscape in a flash.
Wow, August 15th, 2004, a day to remember.
Park Ranger Charlie Callaghan has seen these forces in action.
At about 7:30, I'm looking to the south and I see the lightning. And I'm like, I think there's a storm happening. I start getting a little bit of rain on the windshield. I drive around the curves and there's more and more rain. And then within the next half mile, a torrent of rain. It's a thunderstorm, it's a cloudburst, there's water flowing across the road. And to me, in the desert, I know this means there's going to be a flood. So I'm like, I'm out of here, it's going to flood.
As quickly as it came, it was gone. Morning rose dead silent and pristine. No one would have been the wiser to what had taken place overnight. Except all villains leave a calling card.
This wasn't a 10 or 20 year flood. This was more likely a 100 to 500 year event. This was unprecedented.
Within 2 hours, the storm produced twice the amount of rain Death Valley gets in a year. It wiped out 13 miles of highway, swept 9 vehicles into the wash, and tragically killed 2 people. As incongruous as it seems, water has always been the primary force in shaping Death Valley. Flash floods have scoured the hillside for millions of years, sweeping rocks and sediments into the valley where they spread into magnificent alluvial fans. In glacial times, lakes up to 600 feet deep drowned Death Valley. Today, their beds ripple along the floor and continue to be carved by the elements. Bad water. Its toxic name says it all. It's so extreme, nothing seems to grow here, except salt. When you're at the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, there's nowhere to go but up. Here, even the sky is thirsty. As mineral-rich water floods and evaporates, only spires of salt remain, some up to 3 feet high. On Earth, Death Valley is the closest we come to another planet. And in this abrasive other world, humans are the alien species. This desert dares us to reach beyond our personal outer limits. But even men of iron can melt out here.
Every muscle in my body is like twitching. No, it doesn't feel good. Oh, so annoying. Ow. My body sent me a signal to slow down, so I did. Oh, well. We've ride it out.
The blazing afternoon plays tricks on the mind and cooks up a mirage. Sometimes it's for real. The oasis at the Furnace Creek Resort offers a welcome respite from the heat to park visitors, as well as to gate crashers. Here the living is easy. Maybe a little too easy. For these iconic enemies, the fun is usually in the chase. But sometimes it's just too hot to bother. Water brings sweet relief. Furnace Creek taps into one of the most generous springs in Death Valley, which produces 2,000 gallons a minute. And not a drop of it is wasted on these residents. Away from the amenities of the oasis, life takes a harder tack. Some seek opportunity under the cover of darkness. After spending the day in her burrow, the Miriam's kangaroo rat hops off to forage. She doesn't need to venture far for the grass seed she's after, but to stray even a few yards from her hole could be risky. The dunes at night are a hunter's realm. Remarkably, kangaroo rats live their entire lives without water. They metabolize all they need from the dry seeds they eat. Water isn't even necessary for a bath. A moonlit scrub in the sand removes the oils from her coat and keeps her clean. But a lapse in vigilance can come at a cost. A stealthy predator, the desert sidewinder has no qualms about muscling in on others' territory. Not only will he help himself to a meal, he'll claim the den when he's through. At 2 a.m., it is 111 degrees. For the runners, night offers little relief.
Rag.
Bodies have reached their breaking point. Some runners need serious assistance.
It sounds like she's pretty far behind on fluids, and so that if, you know what we can do, maybe we can start working on getting some fluids in her and kind of catch up.
You're gonna go back out later? Okay, then you drink. He's not drinking.
And for others, this is where the road ends.
I felt great coming in. I felt really fresh and strong, and I did for like the first 25 miles, but suddenly out of nowhere, my legs just gave out, and it was weird. I've never had it happen before. I've never had this experience of dropping out of a race, so it's kind of, it was a little emotional. It opened me up. It like ripped me wide open.
By morning, there's a change in the air, and it's a force to be reckoned with. Wind. Splashing the valley in a confusion of sand, it whips ancient rock into majestic dunes. Amid these mountains of sand, the earth reshapes itself grain by grain. In Death Valley, the devil is in the details. After enduring 120 miles of barbaric conditions, the runners enter the last leg of the race, an 8,300-foot climb into the tree-clad mountains of the Sierras. With each step, they leave the infernal desert farther behind, not only rising out of Death Valley, but in fact, transcending it. After 27 grueling hours, a winner.
I'm a mess.
Oh, that was torture. That hurt in a good way.
Only one will claim first place, but all will claim victory. Pushed beyond the limits of physical and mental endurance, each runner crosses the finish line transformed.
You don't come out the same person physically, but mentally you can come out a lot better off because it becomes a spiritual event, I think.
In a staggering feat, these ultra athletes have not only taken on, but conquered the crucible that is Death Valley. As the sun eases its grip on the valley, the curse of summer is broken. October, and as the heat wanes, creatures emerge from their summer hiding places. Some take their liberation to the streets. Having waited 10 years for a single shot at procreation, male tarantulas head off in search of a female in their last year of life. They'll canvass miles to find one who's receptive. Females living twice as long as males have their share of suitors and can afford to be choosy. He must have just the right touch. Strumming his legs signals his intentions. She likes what she hears and comes up to investigate. Rejection's never easy, but this male is lucky. He gets away with his life. To recoup his strength, he retreats to a nearby puddle to drown his sorrows in a long drink. He needs the nourishment. It may be days before he finds another potential mate. But he'll have to hurry. In just a few weeks, the females will seal off their holes. The brief winter season will soon claim this valley. The first signs make a strong entry. Cirrus clouds. These fast-moving outriders from the western skies signal something big is on the horizon. Something so extraordinary, it may just take Death Valley completely by surprise. As these mighty forces gather and conspire against the sun, they also drive a curious phenomenon. rocks that race with the wind. On the flat clay surface of the racetrack playa, boulders up to 700 pounds sail inexplicably. Though no one has seen them move, each leaves a trail that chronicles their journey, some up to 3,000 feet long. Scientists have puzzled over their mysterious movements for years, offering various theories. As winter storms rake the racetrack at gale force, wind obviously plays a significant role. But whether its ally is ice, water, or something entirely different remains to be determined. For now, Death Valley keeps this mystery locked in stone. Sometimes, even here, hell freezes over. The sun has been devoured. But unlike the summer downburst, this winter storm spreads from coast to mountains to desert, soaking the entire valley for 5 days. And as opposed to the flash flood of summer that wrought devastation, this winter monster shows a benevolent side. This nourishing rain quenches the desert's deepest thirst. Like tiny time capsules, seeds that have lain dormant for decades are finally unlocked and given the chance to create an epic transformation. A million acres of color, the biggest bloom of flowers this valley has seen in a century. The landscape that had been punished for so long is now finally rewarded. Spring will only last mere weeks, and everyone here knows it. When the clock's ticking, it's all about the basics. This time of awakening inspires the emergence of one who has slept through all the drama. Spending 95% of his life underground, the desert tortoise takes advantage of the desert when it's least like a desert. And in this fleeting season, there's no time to waste. He must do all his eating for the year and dash off to find a mate. Though she's unimpressed with his ardent display of affection, he's determined to woo her. When you only have a few weeks above ground, it pays to be persistent. In one final surprising twist, Death Valley outshines even itself and displays a face seldom seen. An enormous lake, 15 miles long and 8 miles wide, washes over a landscape once parched to the bone. This vestige of the winter rains is beautiful, yet short-lived. The full brunt of summer sun will soon bear down to reclaim the valley. But this ultimate testing ground will continue to entice and forever surprise. For now, Death Valley is mirrored in the sublime and the surreal. And in its reflection, other worlds linger briefly in this land of paradox.